And finally, Ruth chapter 4.
Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This, then, is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Amminadab. Amminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse. And Jesse, the father of David.
Amen. Well, by the end of chapter 3, we saw Ruth bare her heart to Boaz, saying in effect to him, "I want you to propose to me. I want you to spread the corner of your garment over me. I want to take refuge in the shadow of your wings." And Boaz's heart just melted within him. He seems to be genuinely shocked that this woman, Ruth, would love him. He says to her, "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask." And we would almost expect the very next paragraph to start, "And they all lived happily ever after." But there is another almighty twist in the tale, another turn in this long and winding road, as Boaz tells us that if Ruth is making herself available again for marriage, there is another person in Israel who has the right to propose to her first. The same integrity which ensured that Boaz left crops at the edge of his field ensures that he keeps God's law here as well. And so early the next morning, we read, Boaz goes off to settle this matter with the other man. Now, the other man, he's interested in becoming the redeemer because he's going to get some property out of this, at least for a while. So he's thinking about paying the redemption price to redeem Elimelech's resources and to take on his responsibilities. Take the property and take on the people who need provision. And then he realizes that he's going to have to support Naomi and Ruth, the Moabite, after all, and he sours on the idea. Now, the way Boaz presents the information is just masterful. He's not deceptive at all, and that's important, but he is shrewd. He is clever. He does know exactly what he's doing. He is well prepared for this conversation, and he knows what he wants. Look at verse 5. He says, after presenting all the good things about the land, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth. And he gives not just her name, but her backstory. You also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. In other words, you'll need to marry this Moabite woman. Are you prepared for that? You'll need to have children with this Moabite woman. Are you prepared for that? And when this child grows older, he will take the inheritance from you because it belongs to Elimelech after all. So you'll get a few years' worth of harvests from this field before it all reverts back to this child. Are you up for that? Well, unsurprisingly, he backs out. Well, if there's a widow involved, she's a Moabite, you say? Well, I've got to protect myself, he says. I've got to look after my own resources. What I thought would be a blessing sounds like a burden. I'm out. And so he backs away, leaving Boaz free to marry the woman that he loved. And he does so as soon as we can, we read. A woman who others literally overlooked and underappreciated. Boaz does the honorable thing. He pays the redemption price. He saves Ruth and even Naomi, who's caught up in this wonderful salvation, from the bitterness that they were both headed for without him. We were just like that, headed for destruction, utterly destitute, but our own Redeemer, Jesus, bought us back, and he paid more than money for us. He paid with his own blood. He redeemed us, he rescued us, he brought us into relationship with him. The people in this story who see what Boaz has done, they are overflowing with praise for him. Boaz, in the days of the judges, when there aren't an awful lot of godly people to celebrate, Boaz is celebrated amongst his peers for his wonderful Christ-like deeds. And in the same way, the kind of onlookers who see what Christ has done, the hosts of heaven celebrate at how he has redeemed for himself a people such as us. The blessings spoken of here by the onlookers, they are more significant than they could possibly have dreamed, aren't they? Did you catch the significance of what they prayed for this couple, Boaz and Ruth? They prayed that Ruth would be fruitful, that she would give birth to children who would go on to shape and affect the future of God's people. And as you know, that is exactly what happens. Just cast your eye down that genealogy that closes the book. When this story was written, the author was amazed at how this union led to great King David being born. But even he, the author, did not know the full extent of the amazing grace of God. Even the narrator writing this story did not know then what you know today, that ultimately this love led to the birth of King Jesus. A little over 1,000 years later, Jesus was born, and he grew up to do the exact same thing as his forefather Boaz. He went on to be a redeemer of his people, his bride, the church. He saved us from a certain fate that we were headed for without him. Though we were weak and helpless, with nothing in our possession and nothing with which to commend ourselves to him, though we were his enemy by birth, he loved us and saved us and brought us into relationship with him. Though we had nothing to offer him, he gave everything to rescue us. And while Boaz paid the price with his money, Jesus paid the price with his blood.